Hello everyone, my name is Rainey. Welcome to another Hearse Boys segment, and right off the bat, before I get into anything, you're probably going to notice a pretty severe downgrade in video quality with this review. And that is because I usually shoot on my iPhone with this very same microphone with a lightning to micro USB cable, which I lost. So I ordered the cable and it's on its way. But in the meantime, I'm still going to give you the same crisp audio quality, but the video is going to take a little bit of a beating, and most of the review is going to be B-roll anyway. So just bear with me for this one, and by the time the next review comes around, I should have all of my ducks in a row, and I should have everything sorted out by then. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into the actual disclaimer and a couple of changes that I wanted to make since the last review. So my reviews from here on in are going to follow a comparison format as opposed to a grading format like, a number or a letter. Now, I feel like a lot of viewers latch on to the number or letter or whatever grade you give a game as opposed to the actual things you say in the review. So to avoid inconsistency or looking dishonest or seeming like I'm making lazy content just for the sake of getting a review out there and getting clicks, I'm going to draw comparison and, state a couple parallels between Death Stranding and this game, since Death Stranding is the last game I played, and you guys have immediate access to my opinion on Death Stranding. Another piece of advice I took from you guys and from my team over here at Hearse Boys is that I'm actually using B-roll of my actual gameplay this time around, and, for every game in the future, because it adds a layer of authenticity, and the review actually feels more honest if you guys can actually see me playing the game and reacting in real time to some of the things that I experienced. So yeah, I've added the in-game footage. Now you know why the camera quality sucks right now, and we're doing the comparison format. So that's just a rundown. And I know that took entirely too long to explain, so without further ado, let's get into Jedi Fallen Order. It's hard to be a Star Wars fan in 2019 with The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, and Jedi Fallen Order all happening within the same time frame and actively marinating in our collective conscience. It seems like we went from not having enough Star Wars to love to having entirely too much of it to keep up with, and I've always worried that this sort of treatment of the intellectual property would muddy its legacy and ultimately turn Star Wars from this epic space fantasy that cemented itself in pop culture as one of the most important film franchises of all time, into this serialized yearly release that's just more and more forgettable every time. And that's what this game feels like to me. This is Jedi Fallen Order. A little over a month later. This game had completely slipped under my radar, considering I was still playing the post-game of what is now one of my favorite games of all time, Death Stranding. So I wasn't super excited about what it was trying to sell. It honestly just felt like EA was trying to line up a Star Wars game's drop with the next major cinematic release as they've done in the past. Battlefront released on November 17th, 2015, Force Awakens dropped a month later. Battlefront 2 released November 17th, 2017, Last Jedi dropped almost exactly a month later. And here we have Jedi Fallen Order now, following the same trend, dropping November 15th, 2019, while The Rise of Skywalker is set to release, you guessed it, just over a month later. Now you may be asking yourself, but Rainey, what does your weirdo conspiracy theory have to do with the game? And you see, it's because of my kooky conspiracy theory that I think the game suffers, most notably from how little game there actually is here. Okay, hear me out for a second. Off the strength of Death Stranding and the weight of that time investment, paired with the rich and original story, this game felt incredibly inconsequential to me. And I only compare the two because it's only natural to compare two experiences you had back to back, and I was still playing DS for a while before I got into Fallen Order. Now, I googled the runtime for Jedi Fallen Order, and it said it's 25 hours long if you're looking everywhere and doing everything, which is probably true, but honestly, Fallen Order's campaign is less than 10 hours long on the lowest difficulty if you beeline it straight for the finale, and on its highest difficulty, it's still between 10 and 15 hours, with that extra 10 if you count the tedium of fighting enemies over and over again, and the amount of time you spend sitting in a loading screen between deaths. It feels short and kind of pointless. But I only say this because, again, I'm coming from a 50-hour experience to this 15-hour sideshow. Again, this is a very dedicated Jedi review. I don't want to frame it in a way that just that's just another video of me praising Death Stranding, but I need to make those comparisons where they are necessary because it makes sense for the format. So as I stated in my last review, I provide context so that you guys know why I'm reviewing a game the way I am, and so it helps you, the viewer, get a sense of my taste as far as video games, and whether or not those tastes align with yours, and help you inform your purchase. So for the sake of context, let's just say that I love Star Wars. I've read so much and watched so much and played so much from Disney canon to Legends canon, it's actually kind of embarrassing. So consider that when I say, as far as video games are concerned, Fallen Order does its job well enough. It's a solid game. The mechanics are akin to Dark Souls and Uncharted. It's a good enough experience to warrant praise, but it's also nothing we haven't seen other games do better. It's fine. It's not by any means a terrible game, but I also don't think it's all people think it's cracked up to be. But as far as Star Wars is concerned, this just didn't do it for me at all. And it's almost entirely because of... I had a playwriting teacher in high school that told us, and I'll never forget it, she said, before you start a script, right, ask yourself what makes today different. What questions does this answer? A great example would be Rogue One. That film answers a question that fans of the original trilogy had been asking for 30 years, and showed you what made that day different from all the rest with this near impossible, almost failed suicide mission. And with a property so vast, teeming with potential, and a galaxy as big as the writer's imagination, I was thoroughly disappointed with how much I was not moved by Fallen Order's story at all. I want to keep this review spoiler free, so let's just say that unlike Rogue One, the story doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know. Rogue One tells us how the events of A New Hope were possible, and Jedi Fallen Order doesn't even expand on the philosophies of his IP in interesting ways.
Building our lightsabers brings us closer to ourselves, the Force, and each other.
Strange that an order of peacekeepers bond around creating weapons.
I've often thought the same thing.
Clone Wars filled in a lot of gaps and develops a lot of characters unceremoniously vanquished in Revenge of the Sith. But in Jedi Fallen Order, you get mostly boring characters with interchangeable dialogue and flat personalities, and worst of all is your character. So you play as Cal Kestis, the flattest, most unlikable protagonist in any Star Wars property since Anakin in Phantom Menace. His struggle doesn't add anything, his efforts feel trivial. I didn't feel anything when he suffered a loss, and any semblance of emotion this kid felt must have died with his master during the Purge. My favorite character is actually our reluctant, cowardly, gambling-indebted, wisecracking Han Solo-esque pilot, Grease. I talked to him any chance I got because when he spoke, it almost always got the whole room talking, and Daniel Roebuck's delivery is the icing on the cake.
Okay, shut that thing off and grab some seed. Cal, we ain't all Jedi. Most of us gotta scrape by and occasionally make some bets we wish we hadn't. I made a mistake, and I almost got you killed. I'm sorry.
I feel like I get a glimpse into a fully realized character's life, the way I would have liked to experience Cal, Seer, and Merrin, all one-dimensional characters who are almost entirely defined by their pain, resulting in their thematic potency diminishing as I pressed on in the story. Now sure, you could argue that this central theme of tragedy is what unites them, and that the tyranny of the Empire has altered their lives forever, and that is what ultimately brought them all here by will of the Force, but the trilogy did the same thing and managed to make each character likable for their own reasons, and not just give me 3 sad SoundCloud rappers. In the end, I felt nothing because everything I did felt like it amounted to nothing, and by the end of it, without spoiling it for you, you find out that it actually quite literally does amount to nothing, because there's no new information. The characters' discoveries don't hit that particular spot because we aren't finding these things out with them, and that's not always a bad thing.
You've never been a bastard. You are Aegon Targaryen, true heir to the Iron Throne.
In this game, I barely gave a shit about anybody, and they do nothing new. They don't explore the Force in an interesting way, or the Jedi, or the Empire, or the Sith, or Star Wars as a whole, because you know they can't change or introduce anything major in the canon before the release of The Rise of Skywalker, so it doesn't fucking matter anyway! Now, if you saw my Death Stranding review, you know that I'm big on story, right? And I know that I just went off on a pretty long tangent about the story in this game. But, to be fair, I think that Star Wars is a pretty sensitive IP to adapt in any regard with one of the most volatile fan bases on the planet, which is why I went on so long about the story, because gameplay and mechanics are always more important. I am not unaware of this, but with a property like Star Wars, you can't just gloss over the story because people care about that shit. I know that gameplay and graphics and mechanics ultimately, you know, take precedence over this kind of thing. But speaking of gameplay, now I know what you're thinking. But Rainey, you said Death Stranding is top 5, but that game's a whole lot of nothing. But that's where you're wrong. There's so much game in Death Stranding, and I'm only drawing this comparison for the sake of context. I'm gonna try and get through this quick, okay? Because I don't want to spend too much time on a game I already reviewed. Let's speed on through this. Ready? On top of Death Stranding's 40 to 50 hour campaign, the game rewards you for playing it in ways that actually benefit your playthrough in more ways than one. You get better equipment every time you increase your chiral connection with certain outposts, like better boots for running, better exoskeletons to make you faster or increase your carrying capacity, better back support so packages take less damage, bags for your packages so that they don't take damage from the rain at all, and more chiral bandwidth so that you can build more structures. In Jedi Fallen Order, you get an antiquated skill tree in 3 tiers with unlockable abilities that just feel like the same thing you could do before, only they take a lot longer to do. In Death Stranding, you deliver packages, sure, and you do a lot of walking, okay, but you also recover stolen cargo from mule camps, kill BTs for their chiral crystals to craft more structures, repair other people's structures, build in conjunction with online structures built by other players, pave roads, create systems of zip lines, create battery generators for your cars and your exoskeletons if in case they run out. Create lockboxes so you can put equipment for other people. Try for record delivery time. Try for record delivery condition in exchange for that better chiral connection, which rewards you with the aforementioned equipment and bandwidth to build those other structures to get you to those outposts. In combat, your blood hurts the monsters, right? That's a mechanic in the game. So if you're out of hematic rounds, which do more damage because they're coated in your blood, you can throw a hematic grenade and the bloody vapor cloud will actually coat your regular bullets in your blood in midair and do more damage. Even the way you load your cargo is a game in and of itself, because the route, what's on it, and how you get there directly influence how you pack your things and how you decide what you're going to take and how you're gonna take it there. In Jedi Fallen Order, you fight a big frog guy for 10 minutes and then you can't unlock the you can't get the box. You can't take the box yet because you gotta go to another planet and fix the robot. But then you spend another 30 minutes trying to go fix the robot. Then you come back to the planet. Then you go to find the box again, because you can't set destinations on the map, by the way, because this is a PS2 game for some reason. And you find the hole where the frog guy was, and then you unlock the box, and then you get a pink poncho. If you're playing on the highest difficulty, this game asks you for a lot and gives you very little for your efforts. And for a company as big as EA handling a property as big as Star Wars, it's pretty insulting how empty this game feels sometimes. And sure, you could argue that the gameplay and defeating the bosses on the highest difficulty in and of itself is the reward. But that's not enough for me. That doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. I need more than that. I actually have 2 PS4 setups, and I played this game on both of them, one of which is a PS4 Slim on a 4K television at home, which looked decent enough, but most of my playthrough was on a vanilla PS4 on a Games Vanguard portable monitor, and that shit looked terrible. This game looks like launch title PS3 graphics, and sometimes during heavily animated situations, the launch title PS3 graphics look like they just butt-chugged an 8-ball of PS2 graphics. Couple this with the clunky controls and buggy gameplay, and you've got yourself a fully fledged EA game. No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't have anywhere to be. I'm just gonna... Hey, you think I could maybe, Could you maybe just... Thank you. I appreciate it. Wait, did I say controls? Did we talk about controls? Let me start by saying that one of the few things I liked about this game was its combat. On the highest difficulty, it's fast, challenging, and variable in terms of how you choose to approach your enemy in any given situation. How you fight one enemy is vastly different than how you fight 6. How you respond to blaster-wielding enemies on a ledge is different than how you respond to melee enemies in front of you. Though, I gotta be honest with you, man, most of the time I just defaulted to force push. And after a while, tacking on crumbs of damage and spending 10 minutes on one room full of enemies gets boring. So I started playing this game on the highest difficulty because it's how everyone said I should play it, and it's how everyone said I could get the, quote, best experience. After getting about halfway through the game, I turned it down to Jedi Knight because I didn't have time to 50-50 my way through a whole other 7 hours of game, and the higher difficulty actually makes the buggy clunkiness and long load time of Fallen Order much worse. Sometimes you just clip through an enemy's attacks. Sometimes you get hit by shit that's just outside your range. Sometimes you ask your droid for a health stim and he just says, "Fuck that," and you die. Sometimes it takes 45 seconds to load the game. Sometimes it takes a minute and 20 seconds to load the game. Sometimes it takes 2 minutes to load the game. All of these problems ruin the experience, especially when you're trying this hard to be a Soulsborne game, because at least From Software respects their audience enough to polish their games in a way where the difficulty reflects fairness. In Soulsborne titles, when you lose, it's almost always entirely your fault. It's because of something you did. And when your game's whole selling point is its difficulty, you owe it to your customers to provide a mechanically sound game. But Fallen Order is giving me PS2 era problems on my 4K television.
Get the fuck out of here!
EA doesn't care. They just wanted to drop something in conjunction with a Star Wars film because it's what they've done twice before. In typical EA fashion, dressing this Dark Souls clone up like a Star Wars title and telling me to play it on the highest difficulty isn't gonna fool me. Which brings me to my next point. Now, as I said in the previous section, at its best, which in this case means highest difficulty, it's a Soulsborne clone that did a fat line of mechanics off Uncharted's thick yams with less polish and none of the finesse of even its earliest titles, cosplaying as a Star Wars game. And at its worst, it's a forgettable Star Wars movie. So if you like Souls games and bad Star Wars stuff, then this game is totally for you. I, however, don't like either of those things, so as I'm sure you've put together by now, this game is not for me. And I know people are gonna default to the old, "Oh, well, you just suck at it, so you turn the difficulty down and now you're saying it's a bad game." I'm not saying it's a bad game at all. I'm just saying it's not for me. And this review, right, reflects the reasons why it's not for me. And I'm trying my best to not come off with an authoritative tone here, because at the end of the day, this is just my opinion, right? And I want it to be informed, and I want it to be concise, and I don't want to look like a guy who's a contrarian for clicks and shit like that. I realize that in my last review, I'm praising a game everybody hated, and in this review, I'm hating a game that everybody praises. But I think it's my responsibility as that content creator and as an outlet for this opinion to give the most concise, the most informed opinion possible. It's hard to defend your opinion when pretty much everybody disagrees with you without it sounding like you're just, trying to be cool and edgy by hating things that other people like. So what's the verdict on this game then? I know I've been pretty harsh with this review, but I tried my best not to look like an asshole here, because it's my responsibility to give you guys a fair analysis, and just because something isn't for me doesn't mean it's bad, or that I can't praise the things that it does right. So if not anything else, this game gets combat right, and with bugs and clunkiness in mind, it still manages to get gameplay and mechanics right, even if they're just ripped off better titles. I knew I wanted to play this game, I just didn't know whether I trusted people's opinions on it. Anytime I hear, "Oh, it's so good, it's just like Dark Souls," I immediately roll my eyes, because I don't think that they think Dark Souls is good for the right reasons. They just see a hard game and think that makes it quality. And if that's all it takes for you to think a game is good, you are within your rights as a consumer and a gamer to think that. But I'm not one of those people, and dressing your Uncharted Dark Souls knockoff in a Star Wars costume isn't going to make me think otherwise.